All right, is a beautiful Monday, and of course, yesterday we got it right that much. And I said winners never quit. Some days are bad, some days are good, but we got this one right. And I know all the investors, they are really actually see they're very happy yesterday. And some people got it as early before even the sporting game. Of course, others got theirs, Real Madrid and Manchester City and Celtic game, which actually was a beautiful one there. But it was risky for some people who played actually a straight win for Real Madrid. Remember, they got that last goal at the added time. But all in all, we said a goal is a goal, a win is a win. 3 points is what matters, and we got it. So today, we shall continue with our predictions once more. Yes, and I'm going to give more three slips for today. And I know this is what my followers actually want to see. Yes, for those who may want actually for the private one, you can always invoke for the VIP, but if you're comfortable with this, you can as well go with it, but don't demand much more than this at this point. All right, we're starting with the Turkish league. This one, Eroskpas versus Imran Yespa. Still in Turkish, if you're to look at Erospa, of course, I didn't lose any game in the last 5 matches, and only that they picked on a one win in the last 5 games, which is kinda not yes, not bad. If I'm to say it's not bad, because a team that did not lose in the last 5 games, it means it's actually a good team. Teams that play a little bit defensive game. Yes. So if you look at Spa, that is, of course, still, which sits on the 15th position. And, of course, in the last 5 games, won 3, lost 2. And you see these two teams. Spa sits on the 3rd position. But Imran Spa, of course, sits that one on the 15th position. So in this game, always we said we are playing safe game. Yes. So for this case, Aerospa can as well win. But for us to be safe, let's go with over 1.5 in this very fast game. And I know that this would be good for us. Then the second game, of course, of the day is Kolyespas versus Fenerbahce. Yes, still we know that this is still in Turkish league. And of course, if you're to look at Kolyespas, of course, lost their last 3 in the last 5 games. They lost 3, they won 2, and they sit on the 9th position. Whereas, of course, Fenerbahce sits on, of course, a 2nd position with a 3 win and 1 loss, of course, in the last 5 games with a single draw, which is quite not bad for them. But what we can say is, it's actually appropriate for us to go with over, of course, over also 1.5, and some may prefer to actually, you can guard also Fenerbahce if you feel like it's appropriate for you, because if you to look at these two teams, their performance is quite not bad, yes, for us investors. So the next, of course, game, the last in this first ticket, is Al Kawud versus Neom. This is still in Saudi Pro League. And if you're to look at these two teams, they're not doing quite very well. Not very well, because if you look at Al Khalhood sits on the 17th positions, and Nims also sits in the 9th position. And if you had to assess their last performance, yeah, the 5 games, you find that Niom, of course, lost 4, drew 1. There's no single win in the last 5 games. But Halkut at least registered 1 win in the last 5 games, lost 3, drew 1. So in this game as well, we are going to play this game under 3.5 to be safe. Under 3.5. There is no much many games in this game. It's a tricky one with the mid-team table be very careful with playing over. We saw it yesterday, that game that you see people were playing, like for example in Premier League, that game between Crystal Palace and Nottingham Forest. So if you're to look at mid-table team, goals are always not many. Yes, so we have to be very careful there. So like, we can go with under 3.5. So this is the first ticket. Rospas versus Imres Spurs. We said over 1.5. Kolyespa versus Fenerbahce. You can also go with over 1.5. Or you can choose to guard still Fenerbahce. Then Halkawood versus Nim. We shall go with under 3.5. So this is the first tickets of the day. Then this second one of the day is Casa Pia versus FC Porto in Portugal itself in Premier League. And we all know that Portugal of recent has been doing quite very well with the 4 wins and 1 draw in the last 5 games. And they sit on the first of that league. Then whereas of course Casa Pia, of course, sits to the 16th position with of course 3 losses, in a loss in the last 5 games with 1 win and 1 draw. So this really poses a big gap between these two teams. And if you also to assess, these two teams have ever met like 8 times, yes, because they all belong in the same league. And FC Porto has managed to pick 7 wins, that is head to head, and only 1 draw. But Casa Pia has not beaten at any point, has not beaten FC Porto. That is why it becomes obvious that let's go with a straight win for FC Porto. Then at the third, of course, the second game in the second, of course, on a second ticket is Udinese versus AS Roma. Now, we all know that this Italian game or Serie A is always a little bit tricky on Monday, but we said this is a risk. We just predict and wait for results. Udinese in the last 10 of course 5 games, they lost of 2, drew 2, and of course they managed to pick only 1 win in the last 5 games. And if also to look at AS Roma itself, they managed to pick 3 wins and 1 draw in the last of course 5 games with only 1 loss, which is not very bad. And we see that AS Roma sits on the 4th position and Udinese on the 10th positions. And these two teams have ever met head-to-head play, whereby AS Roma managed to pick 9, or they won 9 out of 10, and then a single draw. And also Udinese has not beaten AS Roma in the last 10 meetings. So what does this imply to us? But if you have to assess the recent performance, Udine is still not doing to the expectation of AS Roma. So in this game, I would try to guard AS Roma. AS Roma to win or to draw. To me, that is my opinion. So AS Roma to win or draw. Then the last game for the second ticket is Dynamo Zagreb versus Vulkova, that is in Croatia League. So Diamond Zagreb, it's actually sitting on the first positions, and if you to look at their recent performance, they're doing quite very well. They only managed to they lost only 1 game but won 4, which is actually very, very good for them. And Volkova, of course, won 2, lost 2, and draw 1, and sits on the 9th positions in that very league. But of course, these two teams have ever met, whereby all of them won 1-1, yes. But of course, there's that point whereby the draw ended the 1-1. But for us to be safe in this game, we shall actually try to tell Diamond Kevin to win. Yes. I'm going to give Diamond Kevin to win. Then the second game, of course, in the third ticket is Al Riyadh versus Al Nas. So this actually, I can say that quite not bad if you're to follow records. Of course, you look at Al Riyadh sits on the 15th position, and of course, in the last 5 games, they draw 3 and they lost 2. Versus, of course, Al Nassr managed to pick 3 wins, of course, and lost 2, and they're sitting on the second positions currently in that Saudi Pro League. So if you have to look at the records that we are talking about, the head-to-head meeting between these two teams, of course, Al Nassr managed to pick 4 wins and only 1 draw, but Al Riyadh has not beaten Al Nassr at all in the last 5 meeting heads to head. So in this game, still we are going to give Al Nassr to win. Then, of course, the last game in the third, of course, in the third ticket is Sunderland versus Burnley, and this is the Premier League. And I know many people wanted to know why and who will win. It's a tough Monday, and having still 2 stubborn teams. And these 2 stubborn teams got their own records. If you're to look at the last 10 meeting between these 2 teams, Sunderland managed to pick on a 2 win, but draws are alarming. Four draws between these 2 teams, and Burnley managed to also pick 4 wins in the last 10 meetings between them and Sunderland. And currently, of course, Burnley is wounded. He was sitting on the 19th positions, and of course, Sunderland sits on the 11th position. I told you already about the mid-table teams. You don't always expect many goals. Still, all in all, in this game, we are going with under 3.5 for that case. 1, 2, 3 goals is enough. Above that, we are off of it. So we shall go with under 3.5 in this game. And of course, this will be the last game of the day. And we say that winners never quit, always play safely. And remember what happened yesterday. We got it right, and we shall continue not quitting even when things don't look good. Yes, so winners never quit.